Bushwhacks were some of the worst days I've ever had in the mountains, or life, really.
Whereas Panther Mountain is totally opposite. It's a mountain on top of a crater.
I think the weather challenges on this incident were particularly difficult.
It was really the development of New York State. Catskills were responsible.
Now you're listening to Inside the Line, the Catskill Mountains podcast.
We'll record. So welcome to episode 154 of Inside the Line, the Catskill Mountains podcast. Tonight, author Elaine Warfield joins us, and we're going to be talking about her book on the Fenwick Lumber Company. The Fenwick Lumber Company is an amazing establishment that happened over 100 years ago up on the high peak of Hunter Mountain and Southwest Hunter Mountain. So it's just an absolutely amazing time in history to happen over 100 years ago that can say this happened over there. And Elaine's going to talk about her wealth and knowledge of this certain topic. So welcome to the show, Elaine.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's good to have you on here. Your book was fantastic. It's going to be in the show notes, so everybody go out and check this book out because it's absolutely phenomenal. I'm going to put her personal link on there so you don't order it from Amazon. Don't order it from Amazon. Elaine, actually, you got it to me with faster than Amazon did. Well,
yeah, I try to send orders out the same day.
Yeah, I got to admit, it came within 3 days, and I was just like, oh, excellent. Jumped right into it.
Yep.
My wife was kind of ticked off because we were watching TV shows and I was focusing on the book. And I was just like,
there's a lot of information in that book. I'm amazed that you got through the whole thing that fast.
Three quarters. I'm 3/4 away for it. Tad, how about you? I know you got it.
Yeah, I think I did a pretty good job of hitting what I wanted to. And there's a couple add-on questions I got to remember to ask. So.
Well, hopefully I can answer them.
Well, I think you can. So
she will. She'll be answering a lot of questions.
Yeah. So, Elaine, if you can't answer the questions, you just bullshit your way through it, and nobody's going to know. Okay.
Thank you till you make it. I know.
That's the way I do it. So, one of the things we want to talk about. Well, I want to talk about my sister's boyfriend brought this up to me, and I had no clue about this when we were meeting for Christmas. Was New York State Governor Hochul prohibited the intentionally added PFAS outdoor apparel for severe weather conditions. So after January 1st, 2028, a new restriction will go into effect that applies specifically to outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions with internationally added PFAS as described in blah, blah, blah at ECHL. According to that provision, no person shall sell or offer for any sale in New York not previously used outdoor apparel for severe wet conditions containing, which is PFAS, perfluorolactol, and polyfluorolactol substances. Did I say that right?
Absolutely, Stosh.
Wow.
You nailed it.
Yes. So A, at or above the level of department shall establish a regulation, or B, intentionally added chemicals. So with that being said, I have a shell that I believe has that I purchased a while ago for search and rescue and for situations that apply up in the high peaks of the Catskills and stuff like that of course protect you from the elements and such. And this is not one of those shells are like a puffy jacket. This repels everything, and it actually works phenomenal. So I have to look more into this, but it's good, but it's not good at the same time. Like, I like those shells. They're phenomenal. They block everything. Like Tad, we'll talk about our experience later of being on the high peaks of Sherrill and North Dome, and that worked fantastic. But at the same time, I do see why they're doing this, because the breakdown of that stuff has to take, I wouldn't say thousands, not even thousands. It never breaks down.
Yeah. So my personal opinion, gear like that, and I'm not faulting you, because as time goes on, our awareness of the harmful effects of that treatment, we're becoming more and more aware of it. And thankfully, there are suitable alternatives to it. So I added to our notes this product made by Nikki Wax called TX Direct. I've been using it for a few years because when you buy something from Patagonia, as an example, that has a water repellent treatment, because it's not made with the forever chemical, it's going to wear off over time. So you can renew your waterproofing treatment with something like this TX Direct. So you can buy a bottle for just shy of $15. It should be enough to treat 2 jackets, maybe a pair of pants. Stosh, those pants I was wearing this weekend, I've had them for 3 seasons now. And at the beginning of this season, I gave them the Nikki Wax TX Direct treatment. I don't have a problem with water getting through them.
I'll tag that in the show notes. So that's, once again, it's understandable because that stuff doesn't break down like anything else does. Of course, it's basically like a plastic to shell. So applying this TD Direct, could help.
It's a good thing. What do you think, Elaine? You have any comments on that?
Well, I know you hear about those chemicals being not good, for the human body. Other than that, I didn't realize it was anything to do with outdoor clothing. That's the first I heard about that.
Yeah. My shell has that on the like the exterior part. And I know that, I've used that several times in wet conditions, like severe rain up in, New Hampshire, and cold conditions in the Catskills and Adirondacks. And it has worked like insane. But, I haven't, like Tad, you said, I haven't tried this Nikki Wax. So I might have to do that.
Yeah. I mean, even with this forever chemical, as they're come to be known, they do wear off. But when they wear off, they just go into the environment and they just linger on forever, but they're off your garment. So it starts to wet through because it doesn't have a fresh treatment on it. So that's when you apply this Nikki Wax to renew the finish of your garment. And the better practice going forward is to look for products that aren't made with these forever chemicals. And I think they get more and more into the outdoors. They ought to look for products that are more in harmony with leaving no trace. I mean, you may not be throwing out your, Cliff Bar wrapper on the trail, but you're throwing out these microscopic particles, which scientists tell us ends up in the food chain.
Yeah. And Elaine, you brought up a great point, of course, with it leaching onto our skin and stuff like that. I never really thought about that.
Yeah, that, I mean, myself, especially the last year, I've tried to eat a cleaner diet. I've always kind of been a little conscious of it, but, you hear the statistics with so many people being sick that I've tried to amp up a cleaner diet so I'm more aware of chemicals and whatnot. But like I said, I had no idea it was on outdoor clothing. So that makes me think this one raincoat I have that is pretty waterproof. So that makes me think that, okay, what's that got on it?
Yeah. I wonder as well as I actually just ordered a new coat, a new shell from Helly Hansen. So am I going to get arrested?
Yeah. Next year, I think if you're out in the Catskills hiking with that shell and you don't have proof that it's, forever chemical free, you'll be asked to take the jacket off, put your hands behind your back. They'll cuff you and drive you away in a dark green F-250 Ranger vehicle to some woodchuck jail in the Catskills. So
yeah.
so this time next year, folks, you'll know when Stosh has been apprehended wearing his Helly Hansen forever chemical jacket that when he's not on the show anymore, it's just me and Elaine broadcasting live. But chemical free.
Yeah. So look into it. It's Ted makes a point and Elaine makes a point, they could be harmful. And of course they take a long time to break down. And, actually I was at REI today and I checked out, I think I saw some of that Nikki Wax and I should have purchased it, but I'll purchase it directly. I think, a lot of Camp Catskill supports the eco-friendly stuff. So let's see what they have and contact Catskill for some more information.
Yeah, he's very in tune with his product line being green, and I think he's also a member of that Give Back 1% program.
Yep.
Where he gives back 1% of his revenue to the environment. So very cool. Sponsors the show. Go in, buy lots of stuff there.
Yeah.
Elaine, you ever been in that store, Camp Catskill?
No, I haven't. But is that run by Mo?
Mo works there.
Mo's an employee. Yes.
Okay. Yes, I do know Mo. I haven't been in there though.
Cool. Mo's a cool dude. I love him.
He's a really nice guy.
Yeah, he loves the Catskills, so that's good. It's always good. So, unfortunate news that we got to move on to is Wolf 907F, also known as Queen of the Wolves, has passed away in Yellowstone National Park. She was 11 years old, 2 or 3 times older than most wolves achieve in the wild. So 907F was famous for being blind in one eye and for being a beautiful mother. She died December 22nd after being attacked by a rival wolf pack while eating bison carcass with her pups. She is also compared to Grizzly 399, who we talked about a while back, was known as the Queen of the Tetons, and the mother wolf and the mother bear had very many similarities, including a large fan following and also being well known for their maternal instincts. And they have been along in the wild for a big time. That's why they were being followed as well. Sadly, 399 died recently, being a vehicle strike, which is very unfortunate. But they said this was actually a very good death because 907F's death was actually just a real death instead of being struck by a vehicle and stuff. Taylor Rabe, who was a wolf researcher, was tracking her radio collar and indicated that she lived for 3 days after the initial attack before dying. And after a necropsy, she said, "It's sad, but we always love to see wolf die naturally rather than the hands of a human." So it gives us peace that though she went in a natural manner. So RIP to 907F. I've seen videos on her. It's beautiful to see her walking around, taking care of the other wolves, coming together and like being excited when they saw her. So she was a real big icon of the wolf family. And hopefully those wolves will make it over here to the Catskills soon. And we'll see them out in the wild. Silence. That was a really weird ending to that.
Well, that's a moment of silence in memory of 907F. Can't they do better than that? You know, if she was such a popular and well-liked animal, couldn't they do better than 907F? What do you think, Elaine? Do you think they could have come up with the name for her?
Not the state.
Yeah.
The state.
What state was she?
Yeah. I think that's got to be Wyoming.
Oh, in the Yellowstone.
A state agency, they're efficient, whatever.
Yeah, right. We all have our numbers.
Yeah,
right? Even
good
humans.
point. Yeah, it stinks, but once again, it was a natural death. And to see the progress of the wolf expansion that has happened out west is actually like phenomenal. Like I love seeing that they introduce the wolves to different areas. They're reintroducing it to Colorado, certain parts of upper Montana and stuff like that. And that they're actually doing well is pretty phenomenal. And, I remember hearing something about up near towards me, up in the Shenango Valley area, that there was a wolf spotted. But I mean, that's all hearsay all the time. But
yeah.
Well, I can add to that just a little bit. I mean, I live in the Northern Catskills. I live in East Jewett. We have a lot of mountains, a lot of state land around us. And I know we have coyotes, but I know there are wolves too, because once in a while you can hear at night a long, drawn out, very eerie something that isn't a coyote. And it's there's just a total difference in the sound. We don't hear them that much, but way up.
Yeah. Well, I beg to differ, Elaine. That's really not a wolf that you hear making that long, drawn out sound. That's the sound that our listeners make when the podcast is over.
Okay.
Jeez.
Who knows?
a
Who knows?
long gasping howl into the night sky. But while we're on that topic, Stosh, what do you think? They say that 907F died a natural death. What about us? You want like a natural death where a younger pack of podcasters comes and eats us one night while we're recording? Would you like that? Is that what you want your demise to be?
No.
No? Really?
No.
How do you want to die in your sleep?
I'll die in the mountains.
Die recording. Bring the mics into the mountains.
I mean, that's
right.
pretty hardcore. I mean, I don't want somebody to haul me out, but I don't know. I'm just happy to see that the wolves are doing well out there, and it's great to see. Even with the media and stuff like that, that we have the social media and stuff. It's really cool to see this progress of the wolves thriving. Once again, just like they happen to have, I forgot what they are up in Glacier. It's not the minks, but it's the wolverines. The wolverines are thriving up there again, that they reintroduced them again, and it's really cool to see. And unfortunately 907F, hopefully she passed on her expertise on being a mother, and there will be new 907F up in Yellowstone and out west. So RIP to 907F. So last thing, Tad, you added this last second, looks like, right?
Yeah, and this is sort of breaking news. A missing hiker attempting to climb Mount Whitney in California found dead. The hiker was reported missing on January 2nd in California's Sierra Nevada mountains. He was found dead at an elevation of 12,000 feet. Inyo County Search and Rescue said the hiker's body was located around 1 p.m. Saturday near the North Fork of Lone Pine Creek Trail at an elevation of 12,000 feet. In the article, it said, at this time, no further details are available. The deceased hiker was identified as Taylor Rodriguez, a 29-year-old from San Antonio, Texas, but the cause of his death has not yet been determined. Authorities believe that Rodriguez was attempting to summit Mount Whitney on December 30th before he was reported missing on the 2nd of January. The search and rescue operation was initiated by Inyo Search and Rescue, which is a volunteer search and rescue unit. When they started the search and rescue, authorities were unclear which route Rodriguez intended to take, and there were concerns that he may be out there without adequate gear and limited hiking experience. In another article I saw that friends of Rodriguez reported that he had no backcountry experience and began climbing in an indoor gym only in the past few months. Yeah. So, at more than 14,500 feet in elevation, Mount Whitney is the tallest mountain in the lower 48. And for winter hiking and climbing, proper gear is a must. So one of the things I remember, I don't know if you remember this, Stosh, but in November, Inyo Search and Rescue was the operation that found the two struggling hikers and their 150 pounds of gear going up Whitney. So
you can follow their stuff on Facebook and Instagram, and they are active. One of the most active search and rescue teams that I have ever seen.
Yeah. Well, Mount Whitney is so popular that in the prime hiking and climbing months, you need to enter the lottery to get a permit to go out there. So I also note that Inyo is a volunteer unit that was allowed to go out there and do this search and rescue in an area with elevations over 12,000 feet in extreme winter weather. But the New York DEC didn't call in local volunteer SAR teams to search for the 22-year-old Canadian hiker who's still missing in the Adirondacks. I remember you commented on that, Stosh, and how there's all these volunteer units in New York State that weren't called in for that search. So I thought it was a sad irony. Any comments on that, Stosh?
I follow the Inyo team. I've actually talked with one of their members asking, what their apparel is and search like certain rescue techniques that they do. And they are seriously, besides, I would say there's the New Hampshire teams, they're the most active, of course, with Mount Whitney being the tallest in the lower 48. They just go, everybody has to do it for some reason. And we talked about, not even just the people with the 150-pound packs. We've chatted about a lot of people dying. There was an actor that died up on there that they found, the Inyo team found, that was, passed away for like 7 days, and they went back up, and these are volunteer teams searching above 12,000 feet in the winter, in December, out there in the Sierra Nevadas, which might have over, who knows, out
feet.
There that they could get, for 12 to 14 feet of snow.
Yeah.
And, with this whole thing that happened in the Adirondacks, there was over 60 search and rescue or rangers, but there were no volunteer people who are willing to go out there, and that I wouldn't say are as experienced as the rangers, but they are willing to do that, and they are experienced to handle that situation. So, and we all know when, these search and rescue people, we all know when to turn around. We're all like, this is not safe. This is not worth it. We're going to turn around. So it stings. It stings a lot that these, good for them, the Inyo team. If you follow them on Facebook and Instagram, they post a lot of stuff. They do every single thing from helicopter rescues to rope rescues to anything. They're a fantastic team. So that's all I got to say.
All right. So
So Elaine, do you know anything about West and stuff like that? How crazy it is?
You mean out in California, the one that you were just talking about, or the Adirondack one?
Either or. I mean, the one out west is the one we're specifically talking about, but you can add on to the Adirondack one.
Yeah, I had just followed the Adirondack one just because I don't know if you know a guy by the name of John Bulmer. He's Bulmar. He's on the Adirondack Rescue, but he also started, I think, the Adirondack Mountain News. He runs that, and he's also a phenomenal photographer, and he does a lot of different stuff. He's a very talented guy, but I had just followed his posts on the Adirondack one, and it was just really sad. I think it was over the holidays, and I didn't know if they had ever found that guy. I know they hadn't found him around Christmas time or so, but I don't know if they ultimately did find him. I know they had to change it to a recovery from a search and rescue.
I haven't found him yet. I haven't heard anything.
Nope.
Okay, nope. I haven't heard anything either.
Yeah. And I follow the Adirondack Mountain News as well. That's him that he does that?
Yes.
Wow, he
does so much. I can't believe he's out there doing photography every morning. He's got sunrises, he's got sunsets, and then he's interviewing people.
Yeah, he does a great job.
Yeah, he does. I agree.
I would admit that he is the most up to date with the news in the Adirondacks by far. So I'll tag him in this. So thank you, John, if you listen to this podcast, for your updates on upstate New York and the Adirondacks, because you do a great job.
Yeah.
So unfortunate news on both ends, both sides of the country. So we have that. But in 2025, Tad, a good point. I was thinking about this. I didn't write it down, but there's a license guide examination schedule for the New York State. So February 7th, March 1st, February 7th, February 5th, March 1st, February 21st. You can do these license guide examinations, and it requires some certain tests that you got to do, book test, online test as well. I think it's like a 3-day test. I'm not sure. I remember hearing about this.
The impression I have from the flyover I did on the information is the first test for the year is on February 7th. You need to mail in or electronically submit your application by February 5th. The testing on the 7th is online. The testing on March 1st is in person. And then throughout the rest of the year, they have other testing dates online. I think the only one that's in person is on March 1st. You also have to have your first aid and wilderness first aid certification, CPR things of that nature. And there's some other requirements, but if you're thinking about doing it, your first opportunity, you have to have your application in by February 5 of this year.
I mean, I'm reading that email that I got, and it says that they have very many different dates: February 7th, March 1st, May 9th, June 6th, July 11th, September 12th. All exams will be online except for the in-person exam offered by the New York State Outdoor Guides Association, which I know Sean Ananucci is part of, I believe. So, Sean, hook me up, I guess. I don't know. No, I don't really want to. So I will post the email, the link and stuff like that for the guide. So if you want to be a guide, it's a pretty cool program. You get wilderness first aid, wilderness. I don't know if it's first responder that you go into, but I'm pretty sure it's pretty serious stuff. But it's very cool thing to receive in New York State, because you can take people on expeditions and teach them leave no trace, teach them New York State guidelines and stuff like that would be helpful for them and maybe influence them to become a future guide, a future leave no trace influencer, a future podcaster, maybe.
Maybe, or maybe just a guest on ours, which is exciting. Which is exciting, right, Elaine?
Yes, it is.
Yeah, she looks thrilled.
She looks thrilled.
Yes.
So, are you going to go over this DEC episode 18?
Yeah, well, I don't know if you're going to let me or not, because it's relating to the DEC podcast. Am I allowed to talk about that on our show?
Sure, you can do that.
All right. So I threw it in
Jeff will love
show
that.
notes. Yeah. So the DEC podcast, which I forget what their name is. Like what
the DEC does what?
Yeah, DEC does what? Okay. And with our tax dollars, we paid for that creative title. So episode 18 is titled "Don't Be Salty, New York." It focuses on the use of rock salt on roadways and sidewalks, which is necessary for safe and efficient travel during snowy winters, but can have negative impacts on lakes, ponds, rivers, streams, and groundwater. And in fact, up in the Adirondacks, there's a farmer who's suing the state over the excess use of salt on a state highway up there because it's contaminated his well water and interfered with his ability to continue his farming operations, particularly in the winter when he's reliant on well water to give to his cows to drink. So at any rate, episode 18 spotlights the latest environmental news from the DEC, including things about ice fishing, great winter hikes, encouraging New Yorkers to be aware of winter hiking safety. And now, correct me if I'm not reading this right. One of the things that, I see. It's the DEC paint collection program. Which I suppose is interesting, because you're not supposed to throw your paint away with your household garbage. Because if it goes to a landfill, it just leaches or has the potential of leaching into the ground. And then you talk about forever chemicals. Paint is pretty bad on that list. So sarcasm aside, that's probably a worthy read, learning about how you can properly dispose of your paint through the DEC's paint collection program. So with that, I'll turn it back to you, Stosh.
Why? That's I'll have that in the show notes. So yeah, good job, DEC. We'll be getting with them soon, actually, DEC Rangers. Hopefully. You got to respond to that, Ted, by the way.
Oh, for the dates?
Yes, okay. Yes. So, cool. All right. So, thank you, Elaine, for sticking through that. Awesome. So, thank you to the monthly supporters, Chris Garbian, Jeff Jotz, Darren White, Vicky Ferrara, Mike Sautowski, John Comiskey, Summit Seekers, Betsy A., Denise W., Tom, Vanessa, Peggy, Jim C., Michael, and Derek. Thank you guys very much for supporting the show. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate that you still believe in the show. So the sponsor of the show, thank you guys very much. Outdoor Chronicles Photography. Capture your love story against breathtaking backdrops with Outdoor Chronicles Photography. Molly specializes in adventure couple photography, and she'll immortalize your moments amidst stunning landscape in the Catskills, Adirondacks, and the White Mountains. She'll craft timeless images that reflect a unique bond in nature's grandeur. Embark on an unforgettable photographic journey with Outdoor Chronicles Photography. Don't hesitate to get a hold of Molly on all platforms. Also, discover the wilderness with Trailbound Project. Our expert-led hiking and backpacking education program offered unparalleled outdoor experiences. Whether you're a beginner or seasoned pro, join us to learn essential skills, explore stunning trails, and connect with nature. Start today with Trailbound Project and unlock the wonders of the great outdoors. They teach anything from map and compass to wilderness first aid. Check them out. Trailbound Project is available for basically anything. So, mentions. So, Chrissy G went up Balsam Lake with her beautiful dog last weekend. She said basically she only needed spikes going up there. I kind of figured that for high traffic as well. So, Chrissy, you had some great photos. Thank you very much for tagging the show. Balsam Lake is one of the most phenomenal spots in the Catskills. Elaine, has you been there? Balsam Lake Mountain?
No, I have not.
All right, we'll take you up there. Ted and I will take you on a visit up there. It's a phenomenal place with a fire tower. So
yeah, but Elaine, if we take you, you can't wear anything that's made of forever chemicals.
Yeah. Okay, just clue me in. Where is I know I've heard of it, but where is it actually?
That is down below Arkville in the Seeger area.
Oh, okay.
It's Dry Brook Ridge down there in the area. You take a right, or depends on where you're coming from, down onto the Dry Brook Ridge area, and you'll go down to Seeger all the way down, almost all the way down to the end. So fantastic spot. So also, Ted, we met Hunter, Robin, and Daniel on the western descent of North Dome, and also Denise Matterson on the summit of Sherrill. So you guys first listening to the show, thank you guys for doing some good hiking in the Catskills, and we're glad to meet you, and hopefully you remember to listen to the show.
Yeah, well, I think we need a little more backstory there. I mean, Hunter, Rob, and Daniel, I forget if it was all three of them or two of them are listeners of the show.
Two of them. The Hunter was the one that was experienced, and he didn't listen to it.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it was cool to run into some listeners out there, and we had a fun time with them.
Yeah, and Denise took a great picture of us, which I'm going to post later. That was a phenomenal picture. So I'm glad you guys were out and about.
Stash, I heard you're going to get that tattooed on your bicep, that picture of you and I. No?
Never.
Oh, come on. It looked good.
Never. Yeah. So also rate the show. You can go on anywhere and rate the show, share the show, whatever. Thank you if you do. If you just comment on any of our stuff, that gives us a little bit more advertisement somewhat. So Tad or Elaine, are you having anything to drink tonight? Like any beverage that you want to shout out about?
No.
Okay. Like we do. I should probably add that a little bit more, like bring a local brew or something like that in there, Tad. Sorry. So what we do is usually give a shout out to a local brew or pub or something like that has their drink. And we chat about them. So
okay,
Ted,
I'll be prepared next time.
Next time, yeah, we'll have you and Dr. Kudish on here.
There will be a next time.
Yes. So Ted, what you got? You said a No Brew Tuesday.
Well, that was last week.
Oh,
yeah. So here I'm ready. I'm ready to do the official crack.
Oh,
right. Are you joining me or not?
I already did.
Oh,
sounds good.
Yeah. So I have a Black Dome dark beer from the Westkill Brewery, which is one and the same that I munched with you after our hike.
Is it good?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's very tasty. Very tasty.
Nice. So I have Upward Brewing Company. I got this at Van Dusen's after our hike, and it's from Lexington Manor. Very good stuff. Nice straight up cider, I would say. Nothing too crazy, too sweet or dry, right in the middle. It's actually very good. So Upward Brewing Company and Westkill as usual. So previous hikes. Who wants to, Tad, Elaine, you got any previous hikes that you want to chat about that you've done?
I haven't done any in a while. I've done a couple 3500s, but that was when I was younger. Mostly these days, my one of my kids is a logger, and he works by himself. So he works on top of mountains, and I just walk up. I'll bring him lunch.
I mean, I would call that as a hike.
Yeah, and I'll stay for like a half hour, 40 minutes, and then I'll walk down, which he thinks I'm crazy, but it's good exercise, and the views are phenomenal. And there's somewhere that you won't see anybody else. Like he was on this job on Scribner Hollow that was looking toward, one side you could look toward Hunter Mountain and see their lodge there or whatever at the top, and then if you turn slightly to the left, which would be east, you could look toward Haynes Falls and the Clove.
Oh, nice.
So that was about 3,000 feet elevation. Yeah,
beautiful. That's a hike. What the hell are you talking about? That is a hike. And
I didn't start at 0, so I only went up like 700 feet.
That's a hike. You kidding me? 700 feet? That's still a hike. Good job. Where now, where are you? This is towards East Jewett, right?
I live in East Jewett, yeah. And Scribner Hollow is on East Jewett, yep.
I think I know that name. Well, Tad, why do I know that name? Scribner, the SCR.
Scribner Hollow, there's a hotel.
At the end, that's the Hunter side.
Okay.
And then it goes all the way straight through to the Jewett side, East Jewett.
Okay. That's how I remember that name.
Yeah.
So, excellent. So don't say that you don't hike. That's 700 feet. That's a hell of a gain.
Yeah.
Okay. I think it was too bad.
And Elaine, I'm also going to say if you're hiking fresh logging roads, you're hiking in the mud and muck.
Yes. Rough.
Yeah.
Rough.
So.
Yeah.
Some good hiking boots and some waterproof boots with that stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's like hiking in the old days on the Fenwick Lumber Company, right?
Yeah. Well, I hope Elaine's son appreciates the hub grub delivery that Elaine's providing mountainside.
I'm sure he does.
Yeah. You don't get that stuff from, like you said, Hub Grub or what is the DoorDash? That's like your DoorDash, Elaine.
Yeah, I make chicken soup and just bring it up.
Nice.
Cool.
Excellent. Well, fantastic.
Yeah.
So, Tad, do you want to go on about our previous hike or what's up?
Why don't you tell the lay of the land on that one? I'll fill in what you miss.
Yeah. So Tad and I had a Sunday off. Tad decided that he would like to go on a hike. We had a bunch of options I'm completing my winter 3,500, which is weird because, I should have completed that a long time ago, but I've done a lot of winter hikes on different peaks that I just love to complete, like Slide and Twin and stuff like that. And Tad and I decided to go up North Dome and Sherrill. And Tad had a great route going up from, it's not Mink Hollow. I didn't even know what they call it. I call it the water wash area. What do they call that?
Well, if you're
a spillway.
If you're a fisherman, it's known as the Fisherman's Lot on Spruceton Road. And it's pretty much across the road or just a little down the road from, I think it's Tumbleweed. Is that the name of the other?
Tumbleweed Ranch?
Yeah. So it's across the way from there. And what did you think about the start, that first little forest area we went through?
The conifers and stuff?
Yeah.
The plantation, that was a magical area. I thought that whole ascent was actually pretty nice and decent,
Yeah.
And we started off with, I remember it was like 15 degrees at where
probably right. Yeah.
Yeah. And, I had to delayer once going up and, it was a fantastic, no crazy ledges. We had some little tiny steep ascents, like 1 or 2. And it's a straight up good. The property is very narrow. So that's the thing. You got to know when you're on property, the private property in DEC land. But that guy from the Coyote Industries, what was it?
Coyote Systems.
Coyote Systems marks his territory every 8th tree, I would say.
It's like a picket fence.
Oh, yeah. Picket fence with bright green posted signs all the way up to his DEC / area. So, and I thought that route was absolutely fantastic. I have never gone up that way. I have gone down that way from North Dome. So, it was pretty cool going up. Very nice, easy ascent. And when we hit snowshoes, we decided to bare boot it all the way up to like, I'm guessing 3,000, maybe a little bit over.
Yeah, it was right around 3.
Yeah. And we only put snowshoes on because, there was nice drifts that we had no clue about what was below us and stuff. And I'd admit that was a great idea. It was.
Yeah. Well, I thought we were getting enough slipperage by not having any traction on the shows. The shoes gave you that added traction to push off of. Plus, you could use your televators to take some of the incline out of your step. And I'd also just like to note that route that we took up, the benefit of that route, whether you're going up or down, is you avoid the ledges over on the St. Anne side of North Dome. And those ledges in the winter can just be, layered with ice on them.
Yeah.
And going up them maybe isn't all that bad if you have some real beefy, spikes on your feet. But coming down them in the winter, I wouldn't want to do that. I've never done it in the winter going down them. I've always taken this route. But yeah, it's just a nice climb up to North Dome. And I'll turn it back to Stosh to pick up with the recent hike story.
Yeah. So we got the snowshoes on. Very, very nice. Gradual. Once again, like you said, there's enough grip to go up. We hit, I'm guessing it was like 3,500 feet, and we started getting some good snow, like 5 inches of maybe new snow, drifting here and there. So it was a great choice with the snowshoes. We kept them all the way on till probably like 3,000 feet, good descent down Cheryl, whatever you want to call it. And, I remember that there was one time on North Dome where we separated because I was like, oh, this way looks good. And you were like, I'm going to go this way. And we kind of lost each other. Luckily, you had your good old faithful whistle.
My 50-cent piece.
Yeah, the whistle helped.
Yeah.
And we summited, the temperatures were, we summited North Dome. We signed in quickly. It got cold. There was some nice steady wind happening. So I'm guessing the wind chills were down in the low 1s, 2s, and then maybe negatives. Like we didn't stay on there for more than, like 2 minutes.
Yeah. Well, one thing we did do, you're leaving out on North Dome. You, as I understand, for your first time during a Catskill winter hike, you had, I told you about it last show.
Oh, the hot cocoa.
The hot cocoa. It's a game changer, isn't it?
It is. I got to get a new mug, though, that helps it keep it warm.
Yeah. Well, I don't think anything really would have helped you on Sunday. It was cold enough that, you're just losing a lot of temperature during the entire day. But it's one of these, I was like, I'm drinking tea tonight. I normally drink tea in the winter, hot tea. But typically, like an hour into the hike, it's just warm, and by the time you get to your second or third mountain, it's iced tea. But
it wasn't. I'd admit it wasn't bad. We both have an hour and a half drive, so that kind of, it stinks.
Yeah. So I noticed you mixtures up on North Dome, and so doing that, you had the top off, so you're losing heat when you do that. I mixed mine up at home. So I was able to keep my full top on. I have a sipping top on it, so I probably keep more heat in it.
True.
Another hack in the winter is you put your thermos in a sock or just tape right on it, hand warmers. So
that's a little extreme.
Yeah, well, I've been out there, in the old days when I would bring tea with me, and drinking cold tea on a cold day is not fun.
Yeah,
so
true.
I used to use, that's the only time I would use hand warmers on a hike, is to tape them to my tea bottle. So
yeah. So previously, like before we went out, I heated up both my Nalgene bottle water and then my hot teas, my Stanley cup thermos, and I actually felt like I put them both in socks, smart wool socks. They were interior, so they were on the inside of the bag. They kept warm for North Dome, a little bit lukewarm, And then when we went over to Cheryl, they got very, very, like, now I wouldn't say cold, but they got to that point of where it was just chugging down normal water. So, it's tough on those days when you have those wind chills hitting the zeros and such. So
yeah, unless you get something that's a lot more beefier, but unless you're out doing the 6 or the 9, I think you're good for the whole day.
Yeah,
with that combination. But all I know is I tried it 2 hikes ago, and it was just so pleasant to have like hot cocoa on a hike. So also, if you're going to join in the hot cocoa rage in the Catskills this winter, don't buy the mix that comes with those mini mushrooms, or not mushrooms, marshmallows.
Mushrooms.
Yeah, because
mushrooms.
they'll get stuck coming out your cup if you have the mushrooms in there, or marshmallows. I rarely
keep saying mushrooms.
Yeah, who does? No. Maybe
Right?
I had some mushrooms before the recording tonight.
So, and then after that, we go on to Cheryl, and I forgot how steep that ascent is up Cheryl. It's only 500 feet, 500 and something feet, and it's steep as heck.
Yeah. But that's a fairly common pitch that you run into along that range. I mean, frankly, that's just a continuation of the water bar that got busted up when the ice sheets melted. So you're running into the same thing between Plateau and Sugarloaf and Twin. It's that same Catskill pitch, it seems, going through there. But that's a nice hike up there.
Oh yeah. We summited Cheryl. We met Denise. It was awesome.
Yeah, Denise was working on her first round of the 3,500 while her family was over skiing at Hunter.
Yeah. And once again, we descended down. I don't even know. We got to name that ridge. I don't know. We don't have a name for it, but it was Bennett Brook. There's once again a little sliver of land that you can go on. A nice, fabulous descent that had, 1 or 2 ledges, maybe, if you chose the right way, which Tad did. Tad was the navigator in this. He's very good. And I gotta say, we kept on our snowshoes for quite some time. It just felt right. I don't know why.
Yeah, well, to a certain extent, it wasn't necessary, but I'll say that ridge that we descended back down to the Spruceton Valley on, you do that in the summer, and it's one of these descents that you're just going over a lot of talus, broken up rock that's covered up by leaves and branches, and there's a lot of opportunities to just twist an ankle going down it. So having the shoes on made sense. And when the snow is so thin as it was, you're then slipping on the snow leaf combination. And so there was, when we took off our shoes, if you remember, I tried to just bare boot it for a while, and I was just getting too much slippage. So I did put spikes on like you did.
Yeah,
So
I had my spikes on after that, so it was fabulous. But once again, beautiful hike. Got 2 peaks off of the list again, and it's a beautiful day. There was only a couple times when I felt really cold, but once you get moving, you get back in that groove. You get warm again. You got to take off your gloves, take off another layer. It's just a process. You got to know yourself. You got to know when, to take off a layer to keep yourself so you're not getting sweaty and then frozen and stuff. It's such a beating process with the winter that, you got to learn what works for you, basically.
Precisely. You just, part of it is you just got to be able to keep moving, and part of it is you just need to anticipate the right layering combination so you're not over perspiring and have to deal with getting rid of that moisture, or waiting too long to throw a layer on. And then once you start to get that shiver, you need to stop it right away, or it's hard to control.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
So Stosh, did you have a good time hiking with the old man?
Phenomenal. I gotta admit, you're pretty rugged. So
Yeah. I'm pretty well. I didn't hear you. Can you say that again? What was
Pretty
that?
rugged.
Elaine, did you hear what he said? I didn't hear it.
I heard
What was
what
it?
he said.
Yeah.
I
What
heard
was it? Yeah. I want you to write a book about this now, Elaine. Right.
yeah, right.
He's
The
pretty
rugged man.
rugged. He's
I'm
pretty
not as-
rugged. That's the title. He's pretty rugged. as I chug down my stout beer, the
Yeah.
Black Dome.
Yeah, I thought it was a great hike. I enjoyed it. And some of the times you push me pretty hard, and I I tried to keep up, but I was like, fucking stop. I'm trying to enjoy this hike. All right.
Yeah. At least one of us enjoyed ourselves.
I enjoyed it. I had a great time.
I'm only kidding. I had a good time. So let me tell you, you did not know, I made the hugest mistake I've ever made that day. Were you aware of it? Were you aware that, like, when we first met up, I was like, what the fuck? I just made the hugest mistake. Did you have any clue?
I did not.
No. So I'm driving over to the hike. And what am I doing? I'm doing like the stupidest thing you could do.
You have the heat on?
No, I didn't have the heat on. I was in my tent, on top of my Jeep, driving down the road. And it occurs to me as I'm like coming down the hill to make my right-hand turn down Spruceton Road. It occurs to me that for the last hour and 15 minutes, I've been listening to the podcast. Oh. And I'm like, I'm going to spend the rest of the day with Stosh. And here I spent the whole time on my way over with our show from the prior week. It's like, what the fuck? Why did I do that to myself?
I can't listen to myself. No way.
No, especially when if you're going to go to a hike and meet up with me, you can't listen to the podcast on the way there. So I'm like, wow, what a way to just get the wrong vibe going. So what did I do? I quickly, you'll appreciate this. I quickly changed gears and I threw on some Alice in Chains as I'm driving down Spruceton Road, listening to Rooster, cranking away in my ear pods to get me like back into the right vibe. So that was my mistake of the day, right? The pre-hike game.
Nice. That's good. I have to say that's a good mistake. All right. So great hike. Afterwards, we went to Westkill Brewing, enjoyed some brews. We'll talk about that later.
All right.
A little bit. So let's move on. Catskill News, once again, volunteer. They're not up and going right now. We'll talk about that a little bit more in the summertime, but you can look into it. Catskill 3500 Club, Catskill Trail Crew, Catskill Mountains Club, Visitors Center, Jolly Rovers Trail Crew, Brandley Mountain Fire Tower. All those places are definitely doing some volunteer activities in the summer, spring, summer, and fall. Check them out. Definitely support it. If you need stickers, let me know. Send me a message on any social media platform or my email. Let's talk really quickly about the weather forecast that's going on this weekend. Looks to be pretty chilly, like consistent that it's been the past couple, 4 or 5 days. So this is a forecast that's going on. I selected Sugarloaf. It's a pretty good area in the Internet Wilderness and the Devil's Path. So Friday looks to be clear with 30 mile per hour winds to 10 mile per hour winds, a high of 27, a low of 7 degrees with the wind chill. So Saturday looks to be light snow, not a significant amount of snow, about a half an inch total. A high of 18 with a low at nighttime of -4 during the day. It's going to hit -4 degrees with 10 mile per hour wind chills, which is pretty significant. So layers once again. Sunday looks to be a little bit better as in terms of like the forecast. It looks to be cloudy with some clouds later on in the day, still lingering around 18 degrees. Wind chills will bring it down to 0 degrees, maybe into the negatives if you get into those higher peaks areas. So once again, layers, spikes, I would say. Snowshoes, I don't think so, not yet. But you might as well bring them like we did, and they might feel good for you.
Yeah. You hiking this weekend?
Sunday, no, I'll be working.
Saturday and Sunday? We're not going out then?
No.
All right.
Sorry. Do your thing. All right, so we'll do last set of sponsors, and then we'll get on to Elaine's section. It's going to be fantastic. So discover Camp Catskill in Tannersville, your ultimate hiking store. Find top quality gear, apparel, and accessories for all your outdoor adventures. Our expert staff is here to help every hiker, from beginners to seasoned pros. We also carry a variety of unique Catskill souvenirs and gifts. Visit us online at campcatskill.co or in the store to gear up for your next journey. Adventure starts at Camp Catskill. Also, discover the beauty of the Catskills, Adirondacks, and the Hudson Valley with Scenic Route Guiding, our expert guides to ensure a safe, unforgettable hiking experience tailored to your skill level. From breathtaking vistas to hidden gems, or if you're peak bagging, to just simple day hikes, we'll lead you to the best spots and back. Book your adventure today and explore nature's wonders with Scenic Route Guiding. Check them out on all social media platforms. Also, if you mention the podcast, you can get 10% off. Use the code Mountain Lion. And you can also embark on a transformative journey with Another Summit. Another Summit is dedicated to serving veterans and first responders with free outdoor activities. Activities like walks in nature, paddling, hiking, and even backpacking. Join our supportive community to rejuvenate in nature's embrace. Experience camaraderie, adventure, and healing at no cost. Take your next step with Another Summit and ascend to new heights of resilience and joy. Apply today on anothersummit.org. All right, so how about we get on to the guest of the night?
Let's go.
So tonight, author Elaine Warfield joins us and to talk about the Fenwick Lumber Company. Now, she has a book about the Fenwick Lumber Company. I will put it in the show notes, and I will also post this on all our social media platforms. I suggest you purchase this book if you want to learn a great piece about Catskill Mountain history, because, you know what, I hate to say it, but it blows my effing mind that this existed. And I'm guessing that's why Elaine wrote this book, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, it's just a phenomenal piece in Catskill Mountain history. You know, we have amazing stuff in just Catskill Mountain history. We have the tanneries, we have the railroads, and then we have this, which kind of tops everything off. I got to admit, Tad, you agree?
Well, I don't know. The reservoirs factor in there, but I think that what we're going to learn tonight, from Elaine, that the Fenwick Lumber Company played a substantial role in the building of the reservoirs and the aqueduct. But
there you go.
I think what, and we're going to ask Elaine this, but in comparison to other lumbering operations in the Catskill, where did Fenwick rate? You know, was it a small operation? Was it like, you know, the mega operation of lumber operation? She's going to tell us. So stay tuned. And before I turn it back to Stosh, I just want to say, I did get Elaine's book, and even if you don't want to read the book, but you should, I mean, it's worth reading, but at a minimum, just the photos make buying the book worthwhile. Yeah. I mean, it's just because you hike this territory all the time. And when you see what used to be there and how that forest is regenerated since then, I mean, the photos you collected to put in this book are just awesome. Yeah. I'm looking at it right now, and it's just like, it's really, really cool.
Yeah, and those pictures are actually far and few between. It's been really hard. I mean, I got them from other people that have collected them. I found some online. I found some at the library, some at the Mountaintop Historical, but it was like grabbing bits and pieces here and there. And there were a lot of people taking pictures back then, but who knows? They might be still in somebody's attic. Yeah. And they might not even know what they are.
But do you really think there was a lot of people taking pictures back then? Because it's not like the smartphone. I don't think the smartphone was invented until after Fenwick shut down their operation. So
there were several, like there was a guy named Harry Lane, Lanesville, who owned a couple different hotels and boarding houses, and he used to go around taking pictures. He was one. A guy named William Longyear, who was originally out of Jewett, moved to Kingston, and he took a lot of pictures down in Kingston, but he took a lot of Fenwick pictures. And he also, for some odd reason, was capable of doing their phone lines up there, up at Fenwick. And then there was another guy, AJ, I think it was Alan Lea, Lea, who had a place over Phoenicia Way. He had a magazine place. So there were various people going through there taking pictures, and we came across some postcards that somebody said on the back of the postcard, the owner of this place goes and takes pictures and then he sells them. So I'm not saying in abundance, but there were, from all accounts, different people in and out of there taking pictures, because it was something totally different than what, had ever been seen, especially in this area.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll break into that in a little bit, but how about you tell us a quick background about yourself, Elaine?
Okay, well, I'm from Albany, and I've lived in Jewett since 1983. I came up here for a job, and I never left. And then I married someone local up here, so I kind of integrated myself, and my kids have, they've grown up here. So basically, I like to tell people I'm only related to my kids, and my kids are related to most of the people on the mountaintop through my, getting married and my mother-in-law. So I'm the town of Jewett historian. I was appointed back in August. The town asked me, I was already doing this history-related stuff, and then the town asked me if I'd like to fill the vacant position. And right now, my primary focus these days is publishing local history. I just have a real passion for it. Even though I'm not from here, I just see the history, and it just fascinates me.
Yeah. So with your being the East Jewett historian, I'm guessing that brought you into the Fenwick Lumber Company, just searching the history of the Catskill Mountains, grab your attention. What brought you into the Fenwick organization?
Well, that's the town of Hunter. And I was kind of like doing different, I would write different articles sometimes for the Mountaintop Historicals. Like I did some on Lexington, I did some on the Fenwick. But then once I became the historian for Jewett, I'm still doing the other towns, but my primary focus now is Jewett. So the Fenwick, I heard about it I want to say about 10 or 12 years ago, just out of the blue. The Mountaintop Historical was offering a hike up to where the operation took place, over in Edgewood/Lanesville. And Rick Brooks, the surveyor, Brooks and Brooks, he was leading it. Now, I had said, well, boy, that sounds really interesting. I'd like to do it, but I had a conflict, so I couldn't make it. And then a couple years later, Rick did a presentation, a really nice presentation at the Mountaintop Historical. They had in their old barn in the back there. He had this whole presentation set up about Fenwick. Now, Rick is from East Jewett, and we're about the same age, and he's still a surveyor, but I think he sold his company, and he's gradually, helping in the transition. But he did, from the 70s, from what I understand, he did all this research because he was fascinated by Fenwick. And he essentially opened his files to me when I expressed interest. So the further I delved into it, and I'm looking what he has, being a surveyor, he had, I believe, has all Ed West, who is a surveyor, all his files.
Wow.
Yeah, he had all of Renwick Dibble files, who was also a surveyor, and among other things, up at Fenwick. He laid out from what I understand, Renwick Dibble laid out the initial, like all the camps. He laid out the lines, and he basically set it up. And Rick has, from what I understand, those notes. So you're talking 1906, 1905, 1904. So he has all that stuff, and like I said, it was like a treasure chest. Just he let me go in. I was there one day for 5 hours, and I was just poring over everything. And the more I looked at this stuff, I just said to him, well, are you going to do a book? And he said, well, my idea originally was to do a book, but he said, I've got so many other things that he said, I'm not going to do a book. So he basically just said, you know what, whatever you want to use, go ahead and use.
Wow. So I have intentions to get a hold of him. So if you can get a hold of Rick Brooks for me.
I can give you his contact, yeah.
Please, yeah. Before Dr. Kudish actually recommended me to him, and I wasn't sure if he was still around here or stuff like that, where I can get in contact with him. But, that's phenomenal information. What the 1904 to 1907 is what you're talking about. So over 100 years ago, that surveying and stuff like that was happening about this at that elevation and stuff like that. Over 100 years ago, that just is insane.
Yeah, and it was pretty detailed. The notes were pretty detailed from back then, and he named the different people that were helping him out, Renwick Dibble. And since then I had gotten, and it's in the book too, I had gotten information from a relative of Renwick's, and she gave me some pictures of him. And all these pieces just kept coming together. So that whet my interest when I started looking through Rick's stuff, and then I contacted Mike Kudish because I wanted to know about the vegetation and what he saw going on up there and how it had recovered and whatnot. And then I contacted different people that their parents or uncles or whatever had actually worked at Fenwick, or grandfather had worked at Fenwick. And I got stories that they remembered, their relative telling them about, how things worked up there. And then I just pulled everybody that I possibly could together to find out all the information I could. And yeah, I just kept going because I just kept getting more and more fascinated by it. And when I start research, I just kind of like dive deep. I mean, this thing is like 260 pages.
Yeah, I do the same exact thing. I was, Tad, you probably remember my kick on the reservoirs. Like, it's like every other show was a reservoir show because I just went into a kick. Yeah. Now every other show is going to be a Fenwick Lumber Company show.
Yeah, well, all of us listeners remember the reservoir aqueduct craze that was 2024. So
yeah, this blows my mind.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So let's let Elaine dive into it.
So they came up from West Virginia, correct?
So some of them came from West Virginia. Some of them came from upstate New York. Most of them from West Virginia, and the rest of them came from Wilkes-Barre, Pennsylvania. The money people, for the most part, came from Pennsylvania. There seemed to... Now, the one thing that Rick always said to me was he felt, and that was another reason he didn't want to do a book, because he felt the more he delved, and he really delved into it, the more questions there were. He could never find the actual accounting books or any kind of paper trail or anything. But there were some articles in the papers about the operation, but not a lot. And every time they did different articles, which I pulled every one I could find, they had the names all wrong. They missed Morrison. Oh. It was just kind of hilarious. And then you didn't hear anything. So this operation went on for at least 10 years. So the first people that started the whole thing rolling was two brothers by the name of Slauson. They came from Steuben County, New York, and they were loggers. And they had devised this chute to come down the mountain. And the big part about the operation was if you go into Edgewood, there's Ostrander Road. And just next to it, just beyond Ostrander Road, is the Myrtle Brook. Mm-hmm. And it crosses under 214. And you'd think that's a little tiny brook. But that water source at the top supplied this whole operation with water for cooking, the people that lived up there, the horses, the steam engine for the steam donkeys, the two steam donkeys they had. And that was another thing Rick pointed out. If that water source had not been so sufficient, this operation never could have taken place.
Wow. And this is, once again, this isn't like one of those big brooks that we talk about. It's Myrtle Brook. It's not like something you see on the Esopus and stuff like that.
No, it's a tiny little thing at the bottom by the 214.
Yeah. Yeah. So Elaine, let's talk about the Slausons, two brothers from Steuben County, New York. They're the ones that acquired the acreage that eventually was logged out by the Fenwick Company.
Yes.
And when the Slauson brothers were acquiring that acreage, were they doing it because they had a contract with the city of New York, or did that come later?
No, that was later. They weren't involved with that as far as I can tell.
Okay.
They just came in. There was some talk that they might have had some association with the town of Jewett, but I haven't been able to find anything about that. But I found they did have quite a history in Steuben County. Nunda, I think that was the name of one of the cities. But they came here and they logged. They built that chute, as I mentioned, and it was a chute that came down, and that's quite a steep grade from the top down to the Myrtle Brook. And They
And
kind
we're
of
talking about the
miscalculated.
east side of Hunter Mountain, Southwest Hunter, right?
Yeah, so we're talking
Okay.
into Lanesville and Edgewood
Yeah.
technically.
In the Devil Acre area where the lean-to is now.
Yeah, I don't know that the chute went up quite that far.
Mm-hmm.
But still, it was insane.
But eventually they'd have to carry the chute up that far as they, worked further up the mountain harvesting, trees.
I'm not sure how far the Slawsons actually went up.
Okay.
Now, they utilized a mill that was already there. It's about a little over a mile from Route 214. And it was on what they call the old Harrison Benjamin lot. Now, there's like a 25-acre piece there. And the chute would have been on the Myrtle Brook side. And then the mill was about a little over a mile up. In fact, there's still like concrete formations and stuff up there. And that's where they had dug out a pond to feed the trees into the mill. So this chute, they kind of miscalculated. The trees came down so fast that they busted when they got to the bottom. So that obviously kind of defeated the whole purpose of trying to get lumber out of these trees. I'm not saying all of them, but that was a big fault.
Big problem. Yeah.
Yes, in their operation.
So the Slawson brothers financially, they don't make it, right?
Well, that's what everybody says.
Oh.
But I found an article. They sold it to Fenwick.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Fenwick and their partners in, I think it was 1905. And their local newspaper reported that they sold it for a tidy sum of $100,000.
Wow.
And back then, I forget what the conversion was. Back then, that was a lot of money.
Yeah. But now, so so let's talk about the Fenwick outfit. It looks like it's an assemblage of different people from New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia. They come in, they throw $100K at the Slawsons to buy them out. And do you know what?
Ted, how many acres was that, Elaine, by the way?
Several thousand.
Several thousand. Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Ted. Sorry.
Which is a lot for a logging operation, isn't it?
For here?
Yeah.
I would say it was a good chunk. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Especially at that time.
Yeah. And so do we know then when the Fenwick company comes along, if at that time they did this in contemplation of having a contract with the city of New York relative to the construction of the Ashokan and the aqueduct?
Yes. What I can deduct, and from different news articles, they already had a contract when they decided to, however it was approached. Because, the thing is, like a lot of industries, even though they are in different states, the logging industry is kind of small. People know what other companies are doing and whatnot. And somehow they decided to come. They worked a contract for, I think it was 5 million board feet. I think that's what they had the contract to supply. I wasn't able to find, only news articles mention that, but I wasn't able to find it in the actual Ashokan book from 1909. They mentioned lumber contracts, but other companies could have fallen under the main company that was supplying the lumber. And one of them could have been Fenwick. And the Ashokan also had their own on-site mill.
Yeah, because they had all that land to clear. So they would have had lumber from that. So tell us, why did they keep the name Fenwick? They're not, that's a name from West Virginia. They're not operating in Virginia. These are guys from 3 different states. Why Fenwick? Yeah. Any idea?
No idea. But Fenwick was already in West Virginia, logging and mining town. And it was one of those towns that they built like a company store, a company town, and eventually it died out. I think in the 40s or 50s. But yeah, I don't know. I tried to find that out, but I couldn't find why they chose Fenwick. Because the primary amount of the money, it seems, came from businessmen in Pennsylvania.
Yeah. Well, they had coal money, probably.
And, I would say if they built a contract with New York State first and then purchased the land, they want to keep a good name like Fenwick and nothing else, kind of like Fenwick is, I would say, a more American name than anything else, that it would just be established among make popular among, the East Coast and stuff. Possibly. So Ted, you talked about, Ted and Elaine, you talked about the land being purchased for $100,000. I checked that out online to see how much it would be worth in 2025. Wow. $3.3 million.
There we go. Yeah.
Wow.
For 2,000 acres of land, $3.3 million.
Yeah. So Elaine, what we all want to know is, do you know what the Slausons paid for the land they sold for $3.3 million in
No,
today's
I
money?
don't.
Yeah.
I looked at the deeds, which I include the information for the deeds in the book also. They made a lot of purchases from local people, but some of the land deals were not outright purchases. It was very interesting to me when I was reading some of the deeds that after 10 years, they had the option to renew, but obviously they didn't, because they sold to Fenwick before. But what happened was a lot of these deeds were only about rights. They weren't actually, okay, you own the property.
Yeah. So it's like when an oil company comes in and they buy the mineral rights, but they don't buy the land itself.
Probably similar, yeah.
Yeah.
And there was a lot of revision rights, and there was a lot of okay, you can build a road here and you can pile lumber here. They had everything spelled out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, even the Slausons, the people that they were dealing with that owned the property, it was spelled out very clearly as to what rights there were. And then those rights kind of went along when Fenwick bought the property.
Wow.
The same rights.
So in your book, you kind of show the property purchases. Now, if you can bring to our viewers where the property existed. Now, we're going from all the way from Stony Close Notch, which is 214, all the way over to the Spruceton side, correct?
Yes.
Wow.
They had a base camp on the Spruceton side, and they had a summit camp on the very top, and then they had the mill on the Edgewood side about a little more than a mile up from what's now 214. It wasn't technically 214 then.
Yeah, that was basically the railroad. It was the Ulster Delaware Railroad, right?
Yeah, and the big thing about, besides the water, is there was the railroad there already. If the railroad had not been there, if they didn't have their own industrial siding, this operation couldn't have happened. Plus the water.
Oh, unbelievable. So everyone, if you're picturing this, anywhere you hike from Devil's Path from 214 all over to Stony Clove Notch was once deforested and was a lumber company that existed there. So picture that. You're on top of Devil's Acre lean-to, and there was a summit camp up there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wow.
There was quite a few buildings up there.
So Elaine, why don't we start off diving into this, telling us about, because I read in your book that the workers were mainly Hungarians. Did I get that correct?
Yeah, that's what Rick's notes had indicated. And the way he explained it to me, because I attended one of his presentations, the way he explained it is they had, like different lumber companies say, or different companies had agents go to Ellis Island. And when people came in, they had a list of the type of laborers or workers they needed. So people came in, they would hire them, and then coming across the sea, and then literally within a day or two, they'd be on their way to Lanesville, which is amazing when you think about it, 1906. And they stayed at those camps.
Wow.
Yeah, up on the summit.
And just the Hungarians and, of course, the Russians area are hardcore workers. So, I mean, at this time, we're talking about 1907 to 1917, a low wage and stuff like that. And they're doing some heavy hardcore work. Like that isn't like, I can't, like the pictures show the work that they have to do. And I'm like, I'm sorry to say this, but what the fuck? Like, oh my God.
These people weren't working.
The fact that, it's dangerous work, and especially even back then, but they were building roads. I mean, some of the roads are still all the hiking trails up there basically follow a lot of the haul roads, a lot of where the trams were. So the state just went through and essentially, and Pete Centerman told me that, they basically went through and followed what was already there. But if you go up there, there's like banked roads.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
It's very intricate.
Yeah. When all of us hike out to Southwest Hunter, we're hiking over the old rail bed. That went out in that direction. And you'll see on other trails where the one side of the trail, the downhill side, is built up so it's level. And you're on the old rail bed that was used by the Fenwick Lumber Company.
Wow. Yeah. And it's lasted.
Oh, yeah. And it's amazing how quickly they did all that work.
Right. So that's like another thing.
Yeah. It's like they built this huge lumber operation within, a year or so.
And we can't do trails within 10 years. Outrageous.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah. Sorry, Dad.
So, Elaine, let's talk about these hardworking Hungarians. What were they paid? Was it competitive wages for the time? What was included in their wages, the living conditions, because they're all living on site. Why don't you give us the info on what it was like to be a worker for the Fenwick Lumber Company?
Yeah, I couldn't even imagine it. Now, I did read that the living conditions were, they had like kind of a bunkhouse, but the living conditions were not what you would consider optimum, I don't think. Now, there was a fellow who was local, Eli Lane, and his story is in the book, and he tells the story of his father. Now, he was supplying horses for labor because his horses were used to being in the mountains, and he was staying up there for a week or 2 weeks or whatever during the winter, he and his father with their horses and, probably hauling logs and hauling whatever needed to be hauled up the haul road, supplies and whatnot. And his father woke him up in the middle of the night and he said, "Son, my mustache is absolutely frozen." So obviously not, but at any rate, apparently the pay was good enough. It not only did it employ Hungarians for the skill, they had a skill set for whatever labor was necessary, whether it was the logging or building the roads, or maybe even building the bunkhouse and whatnot. But they were paid $1.25 a day. And in 2010, 1910, I had checked out the wages, and that was pretty much what they were getting at that time period for the type of work that they were doing. Now, some of them got paid a little more, like the guy that kept the saws sharp, the guy that sharpened the bandsaw in the mill, he got paid like maybe $2 or $2.25 a day. He got paid more because that was a skill set that obviously was really very important, and he would sharpen the axes and whatnot. But they had a whole bunch of different people that were doing, different types of labor, whether they were running the steam engine, the steam donkey, or they were cabling the log buggies and bringing them the logs down to the mill, or they were coming up on the tram from the Spruceton side after they cut them up to the summit, and then it would be brought down to the mill, and they would, mill all the trees, and then they would sit outside in their piles. And if you've seen some of the pictures I have in there, they show this two-story superintendent's home, and the piles of lumber way, way, way above that two-story.
Yeah,
very neatly stacked.
It's the pictures in the book tell the story basically.
Yeah,
it's just you do it so perfectly that it gives you hunger for more. Like, it's just like, okay, so what's going to go on next? Now, you talk about $125 per day in 1910. So that's $41 in today's wages per day.
Which is still
it's not per hour. It's per freaking day.
Yeah. So they got fed. Yeah, they got fed. And this is also something I researched only because my son is in the industry. But when you're doing that type, or anybody that's doing that type of manual labor, you have to be fed a really good diet. You need, really high calories, because they would work from probably sun up to sundown. And I think they got Sunday off.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a holy day, yeah.
6 days a week.
Yeah. So, Elaine, you have any idea what they did with their free time on Sunday?
I have no idea.
Yeah,
Especially at the summit camp. You know,
Yeah.
if you can't picture this, you're at Stony Clove Notch, which is 1,500 feet to 3,500 feet at the Devil's Acres lean-to. So that's 2,000 feet of elevation. You're not going to be taking a horse down to 1,500 feet and then go over to Hunter. Like, you're going to have to stay at the summit and occupy yourself, right? That's what they did, right?
I would think so. And a lot of them, from what I understand, were, they came from out of the country and they were sending money probably back home.
Wow.
Otherwise, why would they come? And there doesn't seem to be a big indication. I don't know this for sure, but there doesn't seem to be a big indication that a lot of them stayed when the operation was done.
Yeah. Well, they probably got moved to a different area, right?
That's possible. Or they went back.
Well, one of the things I noticed is there's not really a big Hungarian influence in that part of the Catskills. There was, up until recently, the old Margot's Hungarian restaurant that had been out of business for quite a while. And I think last summer, the summer before, they tore it down on Route 28. But you had how many workers were working for Fenwick? Was it in the thousands or hundreds?
No, I think at any one time, I'm trying to think of the number, I would say about 100 at the high point.
Yeah. Jeez.
But
so
then,
2,000 acres with 100 people. Wow. Yeah. Unbelievable.
But so they're all being housed and fed by Fenwick, and that was provided to them above and separate from their pay. And Fenwick had no recreational or social activities for them on Sunday.
I don't know. There wasn't any mention of that I could find, or that Rick mentioned. And he did some pretty deep diving.
Yeah. So was there any local taverns or, restaurants, bars that these guys would go to on Sunday? Or was it just on Sunday they'd just hang around the camp and smoke cigarettes and drink root beer?
That's possible.
I wouldn't think it would be root beer. It'd be probably
sing
like
Hungarian folk songs.
So I remember reading that there was a woman, was it the wife of Fenwick that was up atop cooking bread every day and stuff like that?
Okay, so that was Mrs. Dolan. She was a local lady from Elka Park. Her husband was the engineer on the job. I'm trying to think, his name I think was William. And I think her name was Mary, but don't quote me on that. But yes, she cooked, and the big story is that they had steel rails, from a tram or a railroad. And she had an oven with these rails in it, and she could make 25 loaves of bread at a time.
Wow.
But yeah, she cooked for them.
Yeah. And, bread's very good for protein and stuff like that. But again, I mean, that's pretty crazy, unfortunately, to just be fed bread. I'm guessing they hauled probably chicken and other stuff up top to feed them protein to go throughout the day, right?
They would have to.
Yeah,
I mean, they would have to in order to sustain. You don't want people feeling faint, and to do that kind of work, you have to be fed pretty good, I would think. I mean, that's how it is today.
Yeah. So, you said, her name was Mary Dolan.
I believe her first name was Mary. Yeah.
And her last name was Dolan. So does that have anything to do with the Jimmy Dolan Notch over there?
They're, it's a local family.
Oh, wow.
It's a local family, the Dolan name.
I tried to bring up history about the Jimmy Dolan Notch, and I couldn't find they don't have much history about that in the Catskills. And apparently, wow.
Yeah, you really have to dive deep, and sometimes there's so many layers to get to, what you're trying to find. I'm still learning how to do that, actually, and I've been doing it a while. But there's also Dolan's Lake in Hunter.
Oh, that's towards the base of Hunter Mountain, right?
Yeah, so I assume that might probably be the same family in relation to the same family.
Yeah. So now let's get into the logistics of the operation on Fenwick. So now with your book, you have all these amazing pictures and the amazing descriptions. Now there was a tramway slash railroad that went from the mill up to 3,500 feet. To me, with the existence of 200 over 100 years ago, that is absolutely insane. So can you chat about, like, talk about the tramway railroad 100 years ago? Now, how was that enabled, and how was that built and done? That's just insane.
So obviously it was hand labor. Well, they had horses and oxen, but there were, because I'm looking at the map now, which is in the book. So you have the summit camp at the top, and then there was a major tram that went down toward the Spruceton Valley.
That went to around like 20 or 2,000 feet. So it's 2,300 feet.
So it was, I mean, from what, let's see, Rick told me the average grade was 28%, which is pretty steep.
Jesus. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it was less in some places, but on average, it was 28% grade. So there are some old postcards around, and I include it in the book too, of a guy standing at the bottom of like this tram / chute. And that, even though it says on the postcard, Fenwick, it says lumber operation Lanesville, it's technically Spruceton. He said they mislabeled it, but that's the Spruceton side. So I've never seen the chute, the tram that goes from Summit Camp to the mill site. Now, back then, it would have been a pretty noticeable scar that you could see. Now it's kind of still there, but you have to kind of know where to look. So what I understand is they would cut the timber, say on the Spruceton side, and they would load what they call the log buggies, which was basically a flat car with these wheels that rode on the tram, on the little like railroad, and they would haul with the horses the logs to load the log buggy, and then the log buggy would go to the main tram, which is the one I was just talking about, the one that came from the summit down the Spruceton side, and then they would haul it up using the steam engine with these big gigantic cables. Now these logs were chained on. They were chained on these log buggies, and sometimes they had accidents. In fact, in the book, there's a couple pictures with accidents where they got away from them and they went down over the side of the mountain. So from Spruceton, say, they would haul on the main tram up to the summit camp, and then there was another steam donkey at the top, and that would then they would take that load of logs down to the mill site. So they're hauling it up. Once they get to the top, they're then hauling it down.
Wow.
And the mill site, they had like a spot where they dumped them off, and it went down a hill into the pond where the mill was. And then they had guys like with PV sticks, these big sticks with like hooks on the end, and they would stand on the logs and they'd push them into what they call the green chain, and that would push them into where the mill was, so they could mill the lumber, whatever they needed.
Unbelievable operation that happened, once again from the Spruceton side that went all the way over to the top of 3,500 feet and then went down into around 2,000 feet of the Stony Clove side. So over 100 years ago, once again, I have to say that over 100 years ago that this existed, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah. Well, one of the other things that Stosh and I both were interested in was the heated pond.
Heated pond.
Tell us, do you know how they heated it and why it was heated?
So, and I talked to Beecher Smith about this. Beecher was a longtime logger. He logged for like 65 years, and he was very, very interested. He lived in Lanesville. He was very, very interested in the whole history of Fenwick. So he was a wonderful resource. And his wife also, who is Elaine, descended from the Lanes of Lanesville. And what he told me was the pond they had dug out, and they ran lines. They ran like pipes, and they would push they had the steam engine, so they would push the hot water through so that the pond did not freeze, and it would clean off the ice and stones, whatever, from the logs that were in there. And then it cleaned it off so that when it went in the mill, you don't want logs going in that have stones on them and then they're going to wreck, the saw teeth in that, or the band saw teeth. So that was the reason for the pond. And from what I understand, the some of the pipes are still there. If you poke around, you can still see them.
I have seen them. I gotta admit, I explored over on the Spruceton side, and I have seen the pipes. I haven't explored over on the Myrtle Brook side, though. I'm looking forward to doing that. So,
were the pipes on the Spruceton side for the heated pond, or was that to get water to the camp on the Spruceton side?
You might be right about that. I know more particularly about where the mill site was.
Mm-hmm. While we're talking about water and getting water over to the camp, I don't want to forget to ask you this question. But one of the things in looking through your book and all these fantastic photographs, and we talk about these hardworking Hungarians fresh off the boat that were brought up here to do this work. Why is it in every picture? I mean, look at the picture on page 116, the line of men at the bottom. They're all clean shaven, right? I'll pick another, the next picture. Look at the picture on 113, all clean shaven. Why is it these guys, did they know the photographer was coming and they shaved for the day? Why is it that all these guys were clean? Was there like a dress code, a cleanliness code? Was that the style of the time? I mean, you're out there. The way you talk about, the one guy said his beard or mustache was frozen. Mm-hmm. But they're up there in the winter. It's maybe the pond is heated, but the cabins weren't. But these guys are still shaving. I mean, what's with that? I don't shave every day. I mean, and I have heated water and a bathroom and a toilet that flushes. What is it with this?
I think it's more the times because, I mean, if you look at some of the Fenwick pictures too, they're wearing ties, they're wearing suits.
Well, those aren't the guys cutting down the trees, are they?
Yeah, right.
It's the Fenwick lawyers were on site that day.
But that's how they seemed to dress back then.
Yeah.
They dressed what you would call decent,
Yeah.
And they probably didn't have many changes of clothes. I don't know. I'm assuming.
Yeah. So with this operation that they have, how long did it take for them to set up kind of like everything we're talking about, start to beginning of operations of they truly had it going? How long did that take to set up with the manpower?
From the newspaper articles, it was about a year from when they incorporated in 1906 to when they shipped the first. They said they were ready to ship the first load of lumber, and I'm trying to think how. I think it was 5,000 board feet, and that was a year later.
Wow.
So they had already dried it. They had already sawed it, and it was already dried the required amount of time. And a lot of it was spruce, and spruce has to be dried. Well, spruce dries faster, I guess, but they have to sometimes strap it down, otherwise it twists. I mean, they used Shokan used other wood also, but spruce seemed to be it's light when it dries. That was like one of the more favorite ones, and they had different requirements. Like maybe they needed beams for the the actual under. When they were building, the forms and whatnot. That's what a lot of the lumber went to. A Shokan was for forms, and Beecher Smith had told me that.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. So it took a year of manpower, horsepower, oxen power to build this huge facility that existed on the Southwest Hunter area. Wow.
And then ship out the first load of lumber. Yeah.
Wow.
And was all this work done by the Fenwick Lumber Company, or they bring in like a contractor to build the tramway, the small railroad?
They employed some local people, and they employed the people that they had, that had come in through Ellis Island also. So whatever their skill set was, that's what they were doing, whether it was building road, putting the tram together. And if you look at some of the pictures that the log buggies rode on, that was a pretty intricate thing. They had different layers, like they had several layers of timbers underneath, so that I assume it was pretty sturdy. And then they had to lay the iron on top of that so it rode securely. So I know there were local people that came up that had also worked on the railroad, and then the people that they brought in outside the country.
Yeah. So when we're talking about the intricate log buggies that rode on this, kind of like a railroad, but the rails had a wooden bottom to them, and then they were capped or had a top layer of steel
Yes.
that the wheels rode on. That was the impetus to roller coasters. The first wooden roller coasters and log flumes were derived from these mountain logging operations going over rolling terrain. That maybe that's what these Fenwick guys did on Sunday when they had the day off, is they would hop into one of these things and, do that 2,000-foot descent, at full throttle into the heated pond.
Yeah, that would be
and
quite
I'm tying this all together, Elaine. This is the book. So it's Sunday. The Fenwick guys, they were up late, hooting and hollering. Saturday night, singing Hungarian folk songs. Saturday morning, they got up. They wanted to shave and get cleaned up to go to church. So they hopped in the log buggy or whatever it was. They go down the 2,000-foot descent. They plow into the heated water. They lather up and they shave.
Yeah,
I've
that's
solved
true.
the whole thing now. I've solved the whole thing. It's like the sequel to the Fenwick Lumber Company in the Northern Catskills book. We can.
However, they did have hauled roads that kind of serpentined up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that horse or oxen would bring supplies. So I would assume that's the way they went down instead of, who knows, maybe they hopped on a log buggy.
Yeah, well, my way sounds funner, so, but
yeah, sure.
At any rate, so the operation is from 1906 to 1917.
Approximately.
Yeah. And during that time, the Ashokan Reservoir construction was from 1907 to 1915. So
yes.
Yeah. So there's a strong correlation between the two, that Fenwick is up and running the year before they start constructing the Ashokan, and maybe initially some of the lumber that Fenwick is generating is going to build the facilities that the Ashokan workers are in. But can you give us some backstory, if you can, on the interrelationship between what Fenwick was doing and how it was supplying the work on the Ashokan, and what the lumber was being used for in connection with the building of the reservoir, the aqueduct, or anything else?
Well, in the book, I had taken some photos from, let's see, what's the name of the book? It's the book about 1909 book about the construction of the aqueduct.
Was that the last of the handmade dams?
No,
that's a little bit later.
The Ashokan main dams and dikes of the Ashokan Reservoir, and that was written in 1909, and that has an abundance, it's in the public domain, an abundance of pictures, and those are the pictures that I pulled that show the forms. Like, the Ashokan the tunnels are tremendous. And in the book, I had pulled some of the, and it has the year also, and the projects were numbered. But it shows the forms, and some of those forms, from what I understand, for that wood came from Fenwick. Like maybe, I don't know what they would have been 4x4s, 8x8s, whatever. But whatever Ashokan needed, it was in the contract, and that's what Fenwick supplied. And I understand it was mostly for the support and the forms to actually build the dam around the reservoir.
So do you think this is why Fenwick jumped into this project? Was like they saw the opportunity with the Ashokan Reservoir and the Catskill Aqueduct, and they all just like, well, let's purchase all this land up on Southwest Thunder, and then we could make a crap load of money with New York City.
That would be my assumption, because there were other places that some of the the milled lumber went to, like there were chair factories. In the area, it was like Chichester Chair Factory, and there was some in Hunter, and some of the lumber did go there, but it would seem like the big moneymaker would be Ashokan because they were assured of, 5 million board feet.
Wow. Unbelievable. Jesus. Like how, like five, I mean, I wish I could have somebody that could confiscate what that means, 5 million board feet, but like to build that dam and such like that, during that time, Fenwick was right there. The supply was short, not short, but like the area was short to deliver to. So like the Ulster and Delaware was right there.
Right there, yep.
Wow.
With an industrial siding, so they could load the cars up. So they had the railroad there, and there's like a little side thing where they could pull the cars off, load them up, and then put them right back on the railroad when the train came through, hook it, and take it. And it wasn't that far, like you said.
Wow. I'm guessing somebody, the word got from this person to that person, this person, that person, it connected, and then all of a sudden, boom. Wow, what a great, I don't know, that was just financial opportunity that they had, that they jumped in on.
Yep.
So, Elaine, do you know if the Fenwick guys walked away with a big pile of money? I mean, the Slausons sound like they made out. They got the land together. They had this wacky idea of sliding logs down the side of the mountain. It didn't work out too well for them. And the Fenwick group came and threw what in today's dollars is 3.3 mil at the Slausons, who went back up to Steuben County. How'd the Fenwick group do? Any idea? Did they make a lot of money, a little money? Was it a failure for them?
I don't think it was a failure. I'm not sure they made as much as they thought they would, but they did it for 10 years. Now, there was some discussion in notes I found about them continuing across 214, what's 214 now, up on Silver Hollow, I believe. But there was no water up there, so they didn't pursue that. And when they left, they literally took everything. Because, there's no buildings. I mean, there's artifacts up there. Sometimes you find wheels or pieces of iron or something. But they literally took everything. They took everything down. And they went back to Pennsylvania. And they went back to West Virginia. And they took the mill. But we don't know. And that was a revolutionary. That was one of the newest mills. And Rick said that he turned up something that said it came from England, and it was one of the most modern mills of that time, the steam engine with the bandsaw, and they took that somewhere, I assume maybe Pennsylvania or West Virginia, down to Fenwick.
Yeah,
but there's no records that have turned up.
Yeah, from what you've written in the book, it shows that was like the first operations that existed of the steam engines and stuff, pulling stuff up, going stuff down, making that big of an impact with lumber companies and stuff like that. Like they totally destroyed that. And then, like you said, they left. Everything's gone except for foundations. I found very little over on the Spruceton side. I found pipes and a little bit of railways, maybe some glass bottles, but what I thought I would find, I didn't find.
Well, you got to remember too, 100 years ago, it could be kind of buried under leaves and dirt and.
True.
True.
I mean, but it's still just amazing that place was wiped out of trees. And, from your book, I remember you saying that Fenwick was really good at keeping their boundaries of where they cut trees. Yes. And stuff like that. They never went over the private property areas. They did very well of that. And that's very respectable, of course, with what was going on in the time of the people, of the locals and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. And that was Renwick Dibble who laid out the whole operation for them. And he marked, apparently, the lines very well. And they were respectful because everything was laid out. All the rights were laid out. So they didn't want to, I would assume they didn't want to encroach on anybody and then have a lawsuit and have to deal with that.
Yeah. I mean, it's once again just phenomenal piece of Catskill Mountain history that we're just blown away by. And it's funny how that white mountain was wiped out of its trees. And now I guarantee the novice or somebody that has never been up there or looked in the Catskill Mountain histories could never tell that existed.
No, probably not.
Yeah.
Unless somebody pointed out and said, well, this is the history of what happened up here.
Yeah, well, I'll say my personal experience walking out to Southwest Hunter on that rail trail. It's not the first time I hiked to Southwest. It was like the second or third time that I was taking that route there. And I wondered, why is it they call this a bushwhack, right? It's not a marked trail, but this is like the most stable and fortified trail that you can find that high up in elevation in the Catskills. And that's really what got me into my interest into why was this there. And then I started doing that research. And then one day I was out there and I found an old railroad rail up there, which I thought, wow, that's crazy, because they seem to be all gone, but then you stumble across this lone rail out in the middle of nowhere. It's an interesting find.
Right.
Yeah, if you're not just summit searching, you're looking, you're enjoying nature, and then you can see that, and you're like, "The hell is this crap?" And then all of a sudden, you're just like, "Who leave no trace?" And then you're like, "Wait a minute! I mean, the freaking person had to haul this 18-foot rail up here. Like, come on."
Yeah. Well, they brought it up with an ox or something. So speaking of bringing things up, Elaine, we, Stosh and I, we kind of had our list of topics and questions, but you've spent all this time researching the Fenwick lumber operation, reading the materials that are out there and speaking people that have looked into this before you. What interesting things that did you learn about this that we haven't covered tonight?
Well, the first person I spoke to was a guy named Carl Van Valkenburg, who is now 97 years old. I didn't know who he was. I just heard some strange, it was in New York State white papers. They had written about the area for some research they were doing. And they mentioned Carl Van Valkenburg's article about Fenwick. So then I started hunting. I'm like, okay, was this a book? What was it? So I started asking everyone I could possibly, before I even met with Rick. And it turns out Carl was the one who did research initially before anyone else, back in, I want to say, the early 70s. And he was asked to write an article by a local person who was interested in Fenwick. And that was Mr. Vredenberg out of Spruceton. And he worked on that article for like 7 years. He went up there with a lot of different people, like Ed West being one of them, and different people that knew the history. And this was just very important to me, because then finally I found out where his article was. I got a copy of it, and I found out he was still alive. So I talked to him, and he was, I think he still is. He would have been, 3 years ago, 97. So if he's still with us, he's 100 or so now.
Wow.
His article was like set the tone for every other article that anybody published anything about Fenwick. And there were a lot of, in the 70s, 80s, 90s, there were a lot of different articles about Fenwick, little articles in the newspaper. But his set the tone, and everybody took from his article the main information. So for me, that was like the main interesting starting point of pulling everything together. I'm not sure if that answered your question, but that was just amazing that, the guy was still alive, and he talked to me on the phone and explained how he did his research. He had resources up in Albany. He had access to the main deeds up in Albany that the state kept.
And that article is in your book. Is that the article that starts off at page 15?
Yeah, by Carl Van Valkenburg.
Yeah. And then did you are these photos that you supplemented it with?
Yes, some I got from him, from Carl, and some I got from old postcards, and some I got from John Hamm, who had a collection of pictures also.
Yeah. So if we turn to page 18 and we see that photo, Stosh, you have the book handy?
I do not.
No. Page 18 here. I'll hold it up.
Oh, that's the freaking rail line from the Spruceton Trail that I never found.
Yeah, but I mean
God.
that's just crazy. I mean, you have to buy the book to see this, and
I hated myself. So I mean, to back this up,
we'll go up there during nettle season. We'll go up there and
So Elaine, I went up there with my friend Mark Sudik, who I met up on a mountain, and he listened to the show, and I was like, let's check out this. You have to summit it. Let's check it out a different way. So we went across the rail line. We found stuff, and then I wanted to find that tramway that goes up to Southwest Hunter. We never found the tram line, so we just went straight up to Southwest Hunter, and I see your picture. I purchase your book. I see your picture, and I beat myself every day. I'm like, how did I not find this? Like, it's there. It's dominant.
So here's another interesting piece that I want to touch on. Beecher Smith told me that he heard years ago on the Spruceton side, there is a log buggy somewhere down over the ledge that they couldn't pull out. So if you guys ever hike over there, I want to know if you ever find it, and I want pictures.
All right, we're on a mission. We're going to get some metal detectors, and we're gonna find ourselves a log buggy.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. No, it's going to be fair. I mean, the general area where it is probably fairly obvious. It's just the fact that, like Stosh knows, you're going to have to do like a grid search through there.
Yeah.
So get your buddy Joe, myself, a few others. We'll go out there. We'll find ourselves a log buggy. All right. So Elaine, I have one of my other questions is at or about the time the Fenwick had its summit camp, which we now know is Devil's Acre.
Mm-hmm.
Was it called Devil's Acre?
No, that wasn't. I actually looked it up because I saw that question. They didn't name that. The state named that around 1936 or so on the Devil's Path. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it had anything to do with Fenwick per se.
Okay. And the gang, the Hungarians that worked for the Fenwick Lumber Company, they didn't realize or know that this is an area of the Catskill Park that the state had named or would name Devil's Acre.
Who knows?
Okay. I was just wondering if you had any intel on that story and any relationship to Fenwick. So we're at that point in the show, Elaine, where I got about 2 more swigs of this really delicious Black Dome stout beer left. And we'll give you an opportunity to plug other books that you've researched and published and anything that you're working on.
Well, if anybody's interested in logging books, I have a couple others, plus some kids' books, ElaineWarfieldBooks.com. Currently, I'm working on, as the town historian for Jewett, I'm working on a book on the town of Jewett, because there actually is no dedicated book just for Jewett. And I've already talked to probably about 50 different people. My idea is I want to touch on the oral histories, the remembrances, because, once people pass away, that's it. It's pretty much gone. But I've also got a lot of people have wonderful family pictures or pictures of different times that they've been in family albums and nobody perhaps has seen them except close family. Mm-hmm. So that's what I'm working on now.
Okay. So how did the town of Jewett get its name?
Let's see. Back in the 1800s, Freeborn Jewett was a judge. Mm-hmm. And for whatever reason, they decided to name, he was newly elected at that time. They decided to name the town after him.
Maybe nobody wanted to get in trouble with the judge back then. And so in your research of the town of Jewett, what can you give us like one interesting story that we're going to find in your book to whet our appetites?
Well, I just wrote an article actually for the Mountaintop Historical Society about, and you might have seen them if you you've been to any of the old cemeteries. And whoever thought, I think to myself, that I would be interested in cemeteries, but they have these distinctive looking gravestones that they look brand new, but they're from the 1800s. And they're what they call them a zinc metal. And they were a special process back then. If people couldn't afford granite or stone, these were very affordable. You could put pretty much anything, as long as there was space, pretty much anything you wanted on them, like decorative motifs or whatever. And the town of Jewett has, I want to say, about 6 or 7 or 8 of those throughout we have 12 different cemeteries. And there's several of those very interesting gravestones.
Well, I might have to pull over next time I'm in the town of Jewett, going by a cemetery to try to find one of those.
Oh, they stand out. They're very different from anything else in the cemetery.
Yeah. Huh.
Interesting.
That sounds interesting. Now, one last thing before I turn it over to Stosh. Am I right that you also take photos and sell them online?
Yeah, I do photography.
Well, you kind of like say that kind of like ho hum. Yeah.
No, I do.
Yeah. Well, so I checked, I fancy myself as somebody who can take a decent photo. I checked out some of your stuff online. It looks pretty good.
Thank you.
So
I will attach that in the show notes. So once
Thank
again,
you.
people can look for your books and your photos as well. And I would suggest strongly in purchasing this book if you want to learn more about the Fenwick Lumber Company, because this just goes into great detail about the operations that had over 100. Once again, I say this very often, over 100 years ago. It just blows my mind that it existed over 100 years ago. And Elaine has the information, the pictures that just wants you for more. And once again, the interviews with other people as well that bring into this information, the Catskill Mountain history that once again, that we are just, some of us don't even know about, with the reservoir, with this, the connection to the reservoir of the Fenwick Lumber Company. So Elaine, I'm so grateful to have you on the show, and I'm glad you can join us tonight. I hope you had a good time.
I did, and I really appreciate you, bringing this to light. It's a niche market. Not everybody's going to be interested, but for anybody that, has an interest in the history, it's well worth a look. It's packed, as you saw. It's packed with information.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely. And, you talk about the Mountaintop Historical Society. We have a live episode that's going to be happening there on, I believe it's June 14th.
Oh, good.
So hopefully maybe you can join us and maybe talk a quick little chat about the Fenwick Lumber Company.
Sounds good.
Yeah, June 14th. So maybe I'll invite you to the show, and we'll get a little coordination going on, and people can get a little bit more history about the Fenwick Lumber Company.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah. So we have this last question called Post-Hike Brews and Bites. Where do you go in your local area to get something to eat that you will want to shout out about?
There's some really nice places. Oscar's, the Mexican restaurant in Tannersville, is a favorite. Brave the Flames, right next to the Tannersville post office. The place in Hensonville is really nice. What's it called? It's breakfast and lunch. It's the only one in, no, I shouldn't say it's the only one. It's right in the middle of Hensonville there.
Okay.
The name is escaping me. But really nice food, nice prices, good food.
Nice. Well, I will add those all to Post-Hike Brews and Bites. So thank you once again for
Thank you.
adding your information. So I'd like to thank the monthly supporters, the monthly sponsors once again for donating to the show, believing in the show. And once again, soon we'll be making a huge donation to the Catskills. Can't wait to do that. Also, thank you to everyone who has donated to the show and everyone who is still listening. Once again, after 154 shows with Elaine here talking about the Fenwick Lumber Company, we appreciate it. And we appreciate definitely Elaine taking the time to talk with us about the lumber company that existed that just fascinates me again and again, that I can't stop thinking about it. So thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Have a good night, and hopefully see you in the future.
Yes, I hope so.
Thanks,
All right.
Elaine. Thanks,
Yeah.
Josh.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Hey everyone, I just want to thank you for listening to the show. If you enjoyed the show, subscribe and throw down a smooth review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any podcast platform that you use. You can also check daily updates of the podcast, hikes, hiking news, and local news on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and the official website of the show. Remember this, you gotta just keep on living in the Catskills, man. Livin.
Wicked, 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 wicked.